When we first moved out to the countryside, it felt like a fresh start. Linda and I had been looking for something quieter, away from the buzz of the city. After everything that happened with Tommy, his episodes, the behavioral assessments, the therapists who said he might be on the spectrum, we just wanted to breathe again. The house was a modest 2-story cabin nestled at the edge of a dense forest in northern Washington. No neighbors for miles, no traffic, no sirens, just wind, pine, and space to run. Tommy had just turned 6. He was a quiet boy. Not unfriendly, not cold, just different. He didn't smile like other kids, didn't play the same way either. But in the weeks after the move, something changed. He began spending hours outside, alone. I'd see him through the window, standing at the tree line, whispering or throwing pebbles into the brush. When I'd ask what he was doing, he'd shrug and say, "Just playing with my friend." At first, we chalked it up to imagination. Kids do that, especially in new places. And honestly, we were just glad he seemed happy. Happier than he'd been in months. But then I noticed things. Odd things. The rocks. Perfectly round ones. They'd appear on our porch every morning, stacked into little towers. Sometimes there'd be 5, sometimes 7. Always smooth river stones, even though the nearest creek was over a mile away. I asked Tommy if he was making them. He shook his head. No, he brings them. Who? My friend in the woods. The first time I saw Tommy talking to something I couldn't see, I was standing at the kitchen sink. It was late, almost sundown, and the woods cast long, dark shadows that bled into our backyard. Tommy was maybe 30 feet from the tree line, crouched down with his hands on his knees, laughing. I stepped out onto the deck. "Tommy, time to come in." He stood and waved. "Okay." Then he turned back to the woods and said, "Bye. See you tomorrow." That night, I lay in bed beside Linda and stared at the ceiling. "Do you think it's weird?" I asked. She turned over. "What?" "This imaginary friend thing." She didn't answer right away, just sighed and rubbed her temple. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe. But he's not hurting anyone, Jeff. He's never laughed like this before, ever." That was true. And maybe that's what scared me more than anything. It wasn't until the 2nd month that things got darker. One evening, I found scratches on the back door. Deep ones. Like something with claws had been trying to get in. I figured maybe a raccoon or bobcat had come sniffing around until I saw the size of the marks. They were long, thick, like someone had dragged a garden rake across the wood. I showed them to Linda. "Jesus," she said, "you think it's a bear?" "Maybe," I muttered, though it didn't sit right. We hadn't seen a single bear since we moved in. Hell, even the deer stayed away from the tree line. I'd set up trail cams weeks ago, hoping to catch wildlife on film. They recorded nothing, not even a bird song. I installed motion sensor lights the next day. That night, they went off twice. Nothing was there. The next morning, Tommy came to breakfast with mud on his hands and a smile on his face. "He brought me a stick," he said. "What kind of stick?" Linda asked, trying to sound interested. Tommy held up a gnarled piece of black wood from his home, deep in the trees. He says, "I can visit soon." I decided to follow him. A week later, just after lunch, I watched from the window as Tommy slipped on his red jacket and wandered out to the woods. I waited 5 minutes, then grabbed my boots and followed. I kept my distance, careful not to step on any branches that might give me away. He wasn't walking randomly. Tommy moved with purpose, like he'd done it 100 times before. Every few minutes, he'd stop, crouch, and toss a small rock into the brush, then wait. Sometimes, he'd smile and nod, like he was listening. Eventually, he stopped at a clearing. From behind a thick trunk, I could see him sit cross-legged in the dirt. And that's when I saw it. A shape, large, just beyond the brush, watching. It was tall, at least 7 feet, and still as a statue. Its outline was vague, camouflaged by bark and shadow, but its head, it was wrong. Too big, too wide, I couldn't see eyes, but I felt them. I felt watched. Tommy giggled and threw another rock toward the shape. It tossed one back. I stumbled, snapping a twig. The shape turned. I didn't wait to see more. I grabbed Tommy and ran all the way back to the house. He screamed and kicked, yelling, "Let go. You're scaring him." Back in the kitchen, I knelt to his level. "Tommy," I said, trying to keep calm. "What is that thing in the woods?" He didn't answer, just looked down at the floor. "Is it a person?" He shook his head. "Is it an animal?" "No." "Then what is it?" He looked up at me, face pale. He said, "You're not supposed to see him." "Not yet." That night, I locked every door and window in the house. I didn't tell Linda everything, just said I saw a drifter, maybe someone camping in the woods. Enough to spook her, but not enough to make her panic. She wanted to call the sheriff. I told her I'd handle it, that I'd go out the next morning and check the clearing for signs of someone living out there. Truth is, I didn't sleep a second. I sat by the front window with a loaded rifle across my lap and a sick feeling in my gut. At some point, Tommy wandered into the living room and just stood there, staring at me. "He's mad," he whispered. "He says, you broke the rules." I didn't respond, just watched the forest as the wind picked up and the trees swayed like giants in a slow-motion battle. The next morning, I kept my word and hiked out to the clearing. Linda didn't want me to go alone, but I told her I'd be back in an hour. I packed the rifle, a flashlight, and one of the trail cams I'd pulled down from a dead zone near the house. The woods were silent, too silent. No birdsong, no squirrels chittering. Even the wind seemed to die as I moved deeper. The forest swallowed sound, drank it whole. By the time I reached the clearing, I was soaked with sweat. My breath came in shallow drags, and every hair on my arms stood at attention. The clearing was exactly as I remembered. Dirt, twisted trees, a strange stillness in the air, like the woods were holding their breath. I found footprints, big ones, barefoot, human-shaped but elongated. The toes were too long, too spaced apart, and they were deep, far deeper than a child's weight should have made. Something heavy had stood here. Something that wasn't my son. I placed the trail cam high up in a tree and turned to go. That's when I heard it. A whistle. It came from behind me. Low and long and deliberate. I froze. Every instinct told me not to look, to run, but I turned anyway. There was nothing there, just trees. But the moment I started walking again, I heard it, closer this time. Another whistle, then laughter. Guttural, wrong. I ran. That night, Tommy didn't speak during dinner. He sat still, not touching his food, staring at the window. After we put him to bed, Linda sat with me on the couch. "You're scaring me," she said. "What's going on, Jeff?" I told her everything. The footprints, the thing in the trees, the whistles. I expected her to laugh, to tell me I was paranoid. Instead, she went pale. "There's something I didn't tell you," she whispered. She got up, walked to the hallway closet, and came back with a drawing. It was crumpled, drawn in crayon, one of Tommy's, no doubt. But it wasn't like the others. No houses, no family, no happy sons, or stick figures holding hands. This was different. In it, a tall, pitch-black creature with long arms stood behind a small, red-jacketed boy. The creature's face was empty. No eyes, no mouth, just a gaping black shape where a face should be. "He drew this 2 weeks ago," Linda said. "I found it in his room. He said it was his friend." I stared at it. "I think we need to leave," I said. "Tonight? No, tomorrow morning. We pack up, get a hotel in town. I don't want him here another night." She didn't argue. We went to bed, but sleep never came. Every creak of the house felt deliberate. Every gust of wind against the windows felt like breathing. At 2:13 a.m., the motion sensor light went off. I checked the front porch. Nothing. 5 minutes later, the backyard lights flashed. This time, I grabbed the rifle. Linda followed, half asleep and wide-eyed. We eased out the back door together. The night was cold, damp, too quiet. That's when I saw them. Rocks. Small, smooth river stones, lined in a perfect circle in the middle of the backyard. Inside the circle, Tommy's red jacket. He wasn't wearing it. He wasn't in bed. We ran. We searched the house, top to bottom. No sign of him. The door to the basement was open, so was the back gate. He was gone. We called his name. We screamed into the dark. I grabbed a flashlight and sprinted toward the woods, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Linda followed behind me, barefoot and crying. 10 minutes into the trees, I heard it again. The whistle. Then rocks being thrown. Not at me, not randomly. To someone. I crept forward, light shaking in my hand. And then I saw them. Tommy, sitting on the ground, smiling, laughing. And across from him, It crouched low to the ground, legs bent the wrong way. Its arms were impossibly long. The face was a mess of hair and shadow, with deep-set pits where eyes should have been. It was playing with my son, throwing rocks back to him, gentle, like a parent might. Tommy saw me and beamed, "Daddy." "He says you can meet him now." The creature turned its head slowly, not startled. Calm, almost proud, I raised the rifle. It didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched. "Get away from him," I shouted. Tommy frowned. "You'll scare him." "Tommy, come here." He says, "You're not ready yet." I fired. The bullet tore through the brush where it sat. The creature didn't scream, didn't run. It simply stood, unfolded, stretched to its full, towering height. 9 feet, maybe more. Thin, skeletal, a silhouette of something only seen in horror movies. It opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Only the wind shifted, carrying something cold and bitter that hit my lungs like ice. Tommy clutched his head and screamed. The thing vanished, just gone, melted into the woods like it had never been there. I ran to Tommy, picked him up, held him close. He was burning with fever, whispering in gibberish I didn't understand. He hasn't spoken since. That was 4 months ago. Doctors say it's trauma, that his brain is protecting itself. They've never seen anything like it. We moved back to the city, back to noise and concrete and crowds. He won't go near parks, won't look at trees. At night, he stares at the window and whispers words in his sleep. One time, I recorded him, played it back through an app that analyzes language patterns. The app crashed. When it rebooted, the translation it gave was one word. Soon, 2 weeks ago, we received a package. No return address, just a box on the doorstep. Inside, river stones, 7 of them, stacked in a little tower. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in a cloth stained with something brown and old, was a piece of black wood. the same kind Tommy once brought home. A note was taped to the inside of the lid, scrawled in childlike handwriting. "See you soon." I don't expect anyone to believe me. Hell, if I wasn't the one who lived through it, I wouldn't believe me either. But something was out there in the forests of northern Ontario. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. And it stalked me for miles. This all happened last October, during the tail end of the hiking season. I'd taken time off work and decided to do a solo trip through a lesser-known stretch of boreal forest near Lake Nipigon. The kind of place where the pine trees grow thick and the only sounds are wind and loons. I had mapped out a route that would take me 3 days through the bush, following old logging trails and overgrown animal paths. I've done hikes like this before, never had a problem. I parked my truck off an old service road, hiked in 5 miles the first day, set up camp by a creek. Nothing strange, just the usual sounds of nature settling in at dusk. A few distant owls. I made a small fire, ate my dehydrated meal, and crawled into the tent with the kind of peace you only get when you're off-grid and out of reach. That peace didn't last. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to crunching footsteps outside my tent. Not a raccoon, not a deer. These were heavy, deliberate, like something walking upright. I froze, just laid there with my breath shallow, heart thumping in my throat. I've seen bears in the wild, but they don't walk like that. And they sure as hell don't stand still outside your tent for 20 minutes without making another sound. Eventually, whatever it was moved on. I didn't fall back asleep. The next morning, I shook it off. Told myself it was probably just a moose moving awkwardly through the trees. I packed up camp and kept moving deeper into the woods. But from that point forward, the hike felt off. Like I wasn't alone. You know when you can just feel someone watching you. That's how the entire second day felt. The air was still. Too still. No birds, no squirrels, nothing but the sound of my own boots and breath. Midway through the day, I found prints. Not bear, not wolf. Bigger, longer. Almost human-shaped but wrong. The toes were too long, the heel too narrow. The stride was massive. The claw marks at the ends of the toes were the worst part. Deep, sharp, like something that could rip through flesh without slowing down. I should have turned back, but I told myself I'd finish the route, sleep one more night, and make a direct line back to the truck the following morning. That night, I didn't bother setting up the tent. I slept with my back against a tree, knife in hand, fire burning low. I didn't sleep much. That's when I saw it. Just past the firelight, I caught movement. At first, it was just a silhouette, tall, wide shoulders, the outline of pointed ears against the trees. I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things. But then, it stepped forward just enough that the firelight caught its eyes. They were yellow, reflective, like a dog's, but way too high off the ground. It crouched, lowering itself like it was studying me. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I knew if I did, it would close the distance in seconds. And then it smiled. I'm not kidding. It pulled its lips back, just enough to show a mouthful of jagged, white teeth. Not in a friendly way, not like a dog panting. This was deliberate, predatory. Then it stood to its full height, had to be 8 feet tall, easy, covered in dark fur, matted with twigs and dirt. Its hands, yes, hands, hung low, with long fingers and claws like small knives. It turned its head sideways, like it was analyzing me, measuring me. Then it backed into the trees and disappeared. I don't know how long I sat there. The fire died at some point, but I didn't dare move. I waited for the sky to change, waited for the first hint of blue. The second I had enough light to see, I grabbed my pack and started walking. No trail, no route, just a beeline back toward where I remembered the truck being. Compass in hand, I wasn't trying to finish the hike anymore. I just wanted out. That's when the real stalking began. I could hear it behind me. Never too close, just far enough that I couldn't see it. Snapping twigs, low huffs of breath. Once, I heard something heavy exhale just behind a thick clump of spruce. It was following me, pacing me, staying just out of sight. I started running. I don't know how long I ran. My legs were jelly, lungs on fire. But every time I stopped, I heard it again, closer. A growl, a breath, a twig cracking underfoot. It wasn't charging, it was herding me, keeping pressure on me, like a wolf playing with prey that hadn't given up yet. Eventually, I stumbled into a clearing, an old hunting shack at the edge. Half rotted, doors barely hanging on, but it was shelter. I bolted inside and slammed the door shut behind me. Locked it, barricaded it with a broken table. Then I waited. And then it started circling. It circled the shack for what felt like hours. I sat on the floor, my back against the far wall, trying to keep my breathing quiet. My knife was still in my hand, but it felt pathetic now, like holding a toothpick against a bear. Through a crack in the wood, I saw it pass by. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, long arms that swung too low for anything human. The fur on its back was thick, coarse, patchy in places like it had been in fights, lots of them. It was testing me, testing the walls. I'd hear it walk a few paces, then stop, scratch at the corner. Sometimes it leaned against the boards, making the whole frame groan under its weight. It knew I was in there, knew I was scared, and it was in no rush. At one point, it slammed something heavy against the back door, not trying to break through, just to rattle me. I jumped and nearly dropped the knife. My heart was sprinting by then, thudding so loud I swore it could hear it. The shack was falling apart. It smelled like mildew and piss, and the floorboards sagged beneath me. One good shove, and the whole front could come down. I knew I couldn't stay in there forever. I checked my pack, half a protein bar, some jerky, a half-full water bottle, and my compass. No flare, no bear spray, nothing that could scare it off. My rifle, left it back at the truck like a genius, because nothing ever happens up here. I made a plan. Wait until dusk, slip out the back, and move fast. Keep low, stick to the trees, don't look back. But dusk came and went, and it was still out there. The temperature dropped fast after sundown. My fingers started to go numb. I had to move, or freeze. I forced myself up, gently eased the broken table off the door, and pushed it open as slow as I could. It creaked. Loud, too loud. I waited. Nothing. I stepped outside. Still nothing. The forest was dead silent. That unnatural silence that makes your skin crawl. I could smell it, wet fur and rot. I scanned the tree line but saw nothing. Maybe it had gotten bored. Maybe it was gone. I made it 15 steps before I heard it again. Behind me, snapping twigs, fast. I ran. Branches whipped my face, thorns ripped my arms, but I didn't stop. I barreled through the bush like a madman, half blind in the dark. My only focus was to keep moving. I knew the road was east. I kept the moon to my left and sprinted like death was chasing me, because it was. It didn't howl. It didn't roar. That's what stuck with me. It hunted in silence. I'd catch flashes of it between trees, those glowing yellow eyes, the way it moved more like a predator than a man. Fast, too fast. Every time I thought I'd gotten a lead, I'd hear it again. Closer, always closer. I don't know how far I ran. Maybe a mile, maybe more. But eventually, my legs gave out. I collapsed behind a thick cedar and laid there, trying to quiet my breathing, heart punching my ribs like a trapped animal. Then came the footsteps, soft, calculated. It was near. I gripped the knife with both hands and pressed myself into the dirt. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just trying not to die. It walked right past me. I watched it, 10 feet away. Even in the dark, I could make out the shape of it. The massive chest rising and falling, the way it sniffed the air like a bloodhound. Its arms were longer than any human's, hands dragging just above the ground. The claws glinted in the moonlight. Its ears twitched once, then it moved on, quiet as fog. When it disappeared into the brush, I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I crawled to my feet and kept going. At some point, I found the logging trail again. I recognized the ruts in the dirt and the bend in the trees, maybe a half mile from the road. I started down it, limping, barely able to keep upright. The pain in my legs was dull and constant, but I pushed through it. And then, just before dawn, I saw my truck. I don't remember unlocking it. I don't remember climbing in. All I remember is turning the engine over and flooring it. Gravel kicked up behind me as I tore down that old road, never once looking in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want confirmation. I didn't stop driving until I hit Thunder Bay. It's been 6 months since it happened. I haven't set foot in the woods since. I still have the knife, still stained with dirt and sweat. Some nights, I wake up thinking I hear something outside my window, a low breath, the soft crunch of gravel. But there's never anything there. I told my brother what happened. He laughed, said I must have been sleep-deprived, seeing things. I posted about it online, same story. Trolls, cryptid nuts. People asking what I was smoking. But I know what I saw. And I know it wasn't human. I've since learned that I am not the only one. People have reported sightings across Ontario going back decades. They call it the DOGMAN. Most stories are vague, shadows in the trees, something following them. But a few match mine exactly. They say it watches, follows, tests you. I think it let me go. I think it could have taken me, but it didn't. Maybe it didn't see me as worth the effort. Maybe it already had a kill that night. Or maybe it just enjoys the chase. But if you're reading this and planning to hike alone up north, don't. Some things out there aren't afraid of you. Some things don't run from humans. Some things stalk them. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.